appreciate about our relationship?
What's that?
Like every week and a half or so, I'll end up on your couch for whatever reason, right? And we'll have these conversations. It will start out, small talk, obviously, catching up. Hey, how you been?
Yep.
How's your mother?
Yep.
We'll, try to get some information and see how some of our mutuals are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we'll, go into, new insights or new information that we've come across that's potentially kind of, maybe shifted, change our perspective somehow,
Without a doubt.
It's pretty cool, man, because like, you're probably the only person that I can really think of that I feel safest with my thoughts, right?
I feel the same way. It's definitely like there's certain things that you can bounce off of people.
Yeah.
And there's certain things you bounce off of certain people and they look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But, the creative, open-minded,
Sure.
artistic people of the world,
Sure.
those are the people I throw my bullshit at.
Yeah, man. Because some people just don't realize that when I'm talking, I'm just talking.
Mm.
I'm wrestling with ideas.
Yeah.
And everything that's coming out my mouth, I don't necessarily mean or believe, I should say.
Well, I think sometimes you got to say it out loud.
Absolutely.
To see how it hits. You got to bounce it off of other people and get people's reaction, especially people whose opinion that like you value.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? You got to throw it out there, get
Absolutely.
some feedback, and that's how we put these things together. I mean, there's been plenty of times where I would like sit on something, stew on it for weeks, months, whatever the fuck, have these certain ideas in my head and think that I got it all figured out.
Sure.
And then you say it out loud and someone looks at you like, what?
Yeah.
And then you got to go back to the drawing board and kind of like revise some shit.
But how important is that feedback, right? Because they could probably think you're crazy, but it still may be a sound idea.
It depends on the person, and it depends on, like I said, like if you value their opinion and they give you some feedback, then you got to weigh that feedback. Sometimes it might be worth letting in, sometimes it might not be, but I think it's important to surround yourself with people who it's worth listening to. It doesn't mean that what they say is going to be exactly what you resonate with or exactly what the right thing is.
Sure.
You know what I mean? But I think it's good to throw ideas out there, get the feedback from people, and just continue to look at it. Consider those opinions. You know what I mean? Let it all in and just sift through it and separate, the real from the bull.
No, 100%, man. Iron sharpens iron. And I think one of the key points you just said was considering the information that you're getting. Most people just talk to evaluate. Most people just, listen just to reply, right? Their ideas are already set in stone. They're not wavering. They're not changing what they think.
No.
But they'll be polite and they'll listen to what you have to say.
Yeah.
But not absorb and not consider.
Yeah, a lot of times too. People look at conversation, especially debate. You know what I mean? It's competitive.
It's a contest.
It's a contest. You know what I mean? And they're not really trying. The main point isn't a deeper understanding or trying to get to the truth of a matter.
Sure.
It's I'm trying to show you how fucking smart I am, and I'm gonna beat you with my intelligence, and I'm gonna win the debate and all that shit. And it doesn't usually get. I mean, it's good to debate and it's good to compete with ideas, but if you're not hearing what the other person's saying, then nothing ever gets accomplished. You know what I mean? And there's been too many. I just can't even have those conversations.
Yeah,
anymore.
just too many debates in bad faith.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's sad because we live in an age where we're blessed with an abundance of information that could be exchanged. Right. You literally have the world at your fingertips, but yet it seems like the way we go about exchanging that information isn't the greatest, at least when it comes to discourse, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to read a study and, look at empirical, information and, get a better understanding of our reality and how it works. But when it comes to like human to human relations, man, I just wish we did a better job of, like I said, exchanging that information.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, especially online, the whole social media discourse thing, it's still new. It's still so new to humans. I mean, at this point, we've had Facebook and Instagram and shit forever. It feels like it's always been a part of our life, but it's still so new to people, man. And I don't the human brain is still trying to figure out how to do it. And, I've seen a lot of changes over time. Like a lot of people coming in, a lot more arrogant at first, have humbled over time. And I think part of that is like that idea of like throwing shit out into the world. Getting the feedback, getting the crickets. You know what I mean? And being like, oh, shit, having to go back and reevaluate things.
Crickets are a form of feedback, right?
It's a form of feedback for sure. You see some people posting some wild shit, over and over and over again, and no one's engaging with them. After a while, they're going to be like, damn, man, maybe I got to fucking rethink some things.
Yeah. Yeah, man, because, one of the worst part of my day is when I mindlessly just open Facebook and the memories will pop up.
Oh, yeah.
And some of the dumb shit that I have said, like absolutely ridiculous, and then I just realized that, I was dumb back then, and I'm just less dumb than I was, you know what I mean? And
that's it.
I'm sure 10 years from now, I'll look back and on some things that I've said and have the same reaction.
I mean, that's the hope. I mean, honestly, if we don't look back 10 years at some of the shit that we said and feel like we know better now, we're probably not moving in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in theory, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'd hope, yeah.
What's cool about, another cool thing about our conversations is I know when you're like in like a phase where you're kind of reading a lot, right? Because we all go through our phases, right? There are times where we're reading incessantly, and there are times when it's just not happening, right? Yeah. And when we have these talks, like your mind, like it's just higher resolution thinking. You know what I'm saying? Your ability to synthesize information is a lot better, and your ability to distill, some complex ideas and kind of explain them in simple terms becomes better as well, which is super important. I feel like undervalued skill to have, right? Because people are always trying to sound smart. With $20 words, I'm guilty of it too. You know what I mean? But if you're able to take a complex idea and explain it to a third grader, then that's a true understanding of whatever it is that you're trying to explain, right?
I definitely think that's the truth. I mean, I think, most of the time, I mean, sometimes people use these crazy big words and it's because it's the best way to actually explain something. Sure. But, a lot of the times it's that same thing. It's like people are just flexing. They're trying to show you how smart
and I'm guilty of it.
And it's almost like they don't want you to understand, because if you don't understand, they're like, wow, this dude's so intelligent. He's way over my head. I can't even grasp what he's saying. But that's not a mark of intelligence.
Yeah, it's just a mark of someone having an agenda.
I think so. Yeah, I definitely think so.
And there's so much of that, and that's probably part of the problem when it comes to how we go about exchanging ideas and information, is that it seems like the loudest individuals seem to have an agenda. They're trying to accomplish something, rather than, having the intention of just simply coming to a common ground. It's okay to disagree, but at least, like you said, consider what the person is saying and absorbing that information and weighing it the right way.
Yeah, I think it's like like you said, they either have an agenda or I think sometimes they're reacting emotionally to things. I think sometimes loud people, they're not using logic as much as they're just angry or they're afraid or whatever it might be. So they're screaming about some shit that they haven't really thought through. You know what I mean? But yeah, I appreciate you saying that about being dialed in more. And I feel the same way too. And that's one of my favorite things I like discussing with you, because you're always up on new information also. You're always reading something new, learning a new skill, investigating. So it's like, it's whenever we get into these things, it's never the same old shit.
No.
You know what I mean? It's always something new, something fresh, bouncing ideas off of each other. And, it's cool, man, because, like, you've given me a lot of good recommendations over the years. And I was going to say, hopefully the same,
Same. No, it's funny you say that because, when it comes to, like, the overall theme of books that we get into, I mean, our interests might be slightly different. But I remember the very first book that we connected on. It was a book that you actually recommended. I would argue.
Can't wait to hear this.
I would argue this book was like. I remember this book having a major impact on you, and you just wanted to kind of spread the gospel. It was Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that one got me.
Yeah. I remember.
Set me on a journey.
How old were you?
I was in high school, I think.
Okay.
So I think I was still in high school, like right after high school. It was definitely right around that time. I mean, I was like, growing up, Christian, Catholic, like learning about the Bible and Jesus and shit like that, but always never feeling connected to it. And Joseph Campbell opening me up to the idea that there are other cultures in other parts of the world that would have never connected with Christianity that also have a virgin birth and a crucified savior or, a sacrifice savior or whatever the case, a solar deity, that these things go back to Egypt and the idea of archetypes and things like that. Like Joseph Campbell opened me up to that idea. And I feel like he's the gateway drug to Carl Jung and wider concepts,
Yeah, because, now that I think about it, so a lot of the information that you absorb is on some level trying to kind of find the universality of things, right?
Yeah, like theory of everything, or just the interconnectedness of everything, the way that everything relates to each other. In
other words, connecting the dots.
Connecting the dots. That's the way to look at it.
Was that the first book where you kind of found your love of connecting the dots? Or was that something you've always kind of had when you were a kid?
It might be the first book I remember. I think I was always interested in what's underneath the surface. You know what I mean? I don't think I was ever interested in the mainstream narrative. It's I wanted to know the secrets. I wanted to know the hidden shit.
Even when you were young?
Even when I was young, I felt like I had a pull towards it, but I didn't know where to look. Okay. I remember when someone first told me that there was a book, Behold a Pale Horse, and what was in it. It was oh shit, the idea that you could get up on some secret hidden knowledge that you're not supposed to know was attractive. Joseph Campbell was my gateway drug. He's definitely my gateway drug.
That's an interesting way to kind of put it.
Well, it introduced me to the idea of universal themes. Mm-hmm. The idea that Christianity wasn't necessarily, no offense to anybody, it wasn't necessarily a unique idea. These ideas, these types of stories, there are similar ones that go back to Egypt and before, if there is a before. But yeah, so that it opened me up to that idea that we're all trying to tell the same story.
Sure.
And we have different ways of interpreting it. We make up different names of gods and different concepts. But at the end of the day, there's one story. And all different people all over the world are just trying to tell that story.
Did coming across Joseph Campbell kind of reignite your spirituality? Because like you mentioned, you were a Christian, and it probably didn't resonate with you like that.
I think I always had a spiritual sense. I always wanted to connect with something bigger than me. And I didn't necessarily look at it as God or, some man in the sky or anything like that. I don't even know if I knew what it was, but I was always a seeker for it. I wanted to connect with something, greater than me. I think a lot of artists are like that. You know what I mean? You want to connect to something. I mean, a lot of experimenting with drugs when I was younger, it wasn't to escape pain. Sure. You know what I mean? It wasn't I was trying to suppress anything. It was I wanted to have an experience. I wanted to go on a trip. Sure. I wanted to go exploring. You know what I mean? I wanted to connect with other worlds. You know what I mean?
What would you say? I don't know if this is a big question, but what would you say are the 3 to 5 books that most impact the way that you see the world today?
Man,
take your time.
Yeah, that's tough. That's a big one. I mean, The Power of Myth opened me up. I'd have to put that on there just because it was foundational in a lot of ways. But man, there's a book called A Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe by Michael Schneider.
It's a big title.
Yeah, it just goes through the numbers 1 to 10, but it breaks down the different patterns that you see all throughout nature and in the world as it relates to each number. Okay. And it's really dope because again, it goes into that. It goes into that idea of the interrelated nature of everything. Okay. The Neoplatonists, from what I understand, they look at it that way as well. Everything is one, but there are certain forms of the one. Okay. And everything kind of falls into these certain forms. Gotcha. You know what I mean? So there's a template, there's an outline.
An archetype almost.
There's an archetype almost. Yeah. Exactly. You know what I mean? In the way that all these things fit together. So that's one I would say. Last year I read a book called In Search of the Miraculous by P.D. Ouspensky. And he traveled with Eastern mystic Gurdjieff. You ever heard of Gurdjieff?
I haven't heard of Gurdjieff.
And that one was pretty interesting, but it had certain ideas in it that I thought were that stuck with me. One of the ideas was like, people are always trying to do something, like oh, the world is this certain way. We have to do something about it.
Gotcha.
And it's like you can't do anything. You know what I mean? Like the current is the current.
Sure.
You can either resist it or you can fall in line with it and flow with it.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Astrology falls into that a little bit, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. I think it's kind of that same concept. And it's like it's limiting in some ways if you feel like, well, I'm just stuck in the tide.
It's very fatalistic.
Doing what I'm doing in a certain way, but at the same time, it's kind of liberating because it's like, oh, if shit is going crazy right now and it's making people anxious and things are nuts, maybe that's just where we're supposed to be at in the cycle right now.
Okay.
And it can kind of almost give you a little bit of like, all right, well, we know that things are always moving in and out. So this will be a temporary thing,
Gotcha.
And it'll flow to a new pattern at some point.
Does he discuss how to approach kind of like this idea?
He has a system that he kind of breaks down,
Okay.
Little like mathematical system, and again, he gets into like the interrelated nature of certain things, the planets, the musical notes, things like that, the way that it relates. It was pretty interesting. It was just, I wouldn't even necessarily say it's top 3 to 5, but it came to mind in terms of like things that have stuck with me recently.
Sure. What else?
I read the Valis trilogy by Philip K. Dick. I've been getting more into like some sci-fi and fantasy and shit lately because when I need a break from like facts or just nonfiction, I feel like that's a way to still go down that path because these fantasy and sci-fi stories, they're just allegory. They're trying to tell a spiritual story in some way, a story of something bigger, the way that these things relate.
Sure.
And so Valis, The Divine Invasion, and The Transmigration of Timothy Archer were really fucking dope.
Okay, there's good stories.
Really good stories. Science fiction, but just it, breaks down the idea like Valis is the idea of like these like lasers being sent into human brains that transmit information. Okay. And like people receiving these signals. Okay. And we've talked about that before too, like the signal and the noise and the idea that like, the human brain is an antenna. It's nothing is stored in the brain. Sure. The brain's just an antenna. Yep. The information comes from somewhere else. Yeah. And depending on how sharp or how toxified our antenna is, we'll either receive the signal or we'll be blocked off from it.
That's interesting.
What else? The Glass Bead Game by Hermann Hesse was really good. Okay. But Narcissus and Goldman by Hermann Hesse was fucking amazing. Okay. I loved that book.
What's that book about?
It's about a lot of, I've read a few of his books, Hermann Hesse, and his main theme that he kind of juggles with, at least like in a few of these books, is kind of like the mind versus the flesh. You know what I mean? Like he was an academic, an intellectual. He was an author, wrote books for a living. But I think he struggled with the fact that he wasn't out there partying and fucking and doing, you know what I mean?
Just
and
living life.
And living that life. So a lot of his stories kind of wrestle with those types of themes. So Narcissus and Goldman, it's about like, like a monk and another dude who goes to the school to be a monk, but then ends up leaving and fucking every girl he can find and drinking and getting into fights and all this shit. Sure. And it just explores their relationship because they're best friends, even though they're completely different in so many ways. Yeah. I really like that one. Shit. I just read Dune. It's fucking dope.
Yeah, good story.
It's probably one of my favorite movies of 2021.
You already read the book?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're just firing through these books now lately.
I mean, I'm trying to watch less TV and shit, man.
Good
like
for
if I'm home by myself, I try to like after work and shit, I try to not turn the TV on. I just try to read. And if I'm into a book, if I'm really into it, I'll even wake up early in the morning and like leave early so I can get to work and, sit in my car and read for a half hour before I go in. And I keep a book in my car. I read on my lunch break, shit like that. So I've been dedicating a lot of time to it. So yeah, I've been kind of rifling through certain things.
Now, is this something like you've intentionally like like you set out, like, listen, like I'm gonna chill out with the internet and the TV, and I'm gonna make a point to read more, and this is the result of that.
It's part of it. Definitely want to spend less time just getting sucked into, rabbit holes that don't do me any good.
Sure.
And yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for a great movie, a great TV show. Sure. So I'm not, I'm cool with spending some time, watching some shows and shit like that. But yeah, the more I can read, you said it yourself. It's like I feel sharper.
You feel a lot.
You know
sharper.
what I mean? Like even like those mornings where I can start the morning like quiet, just sitting, cup of coffee, sitting there with my book. I feel like it gets my mind geared up in a place where I'm just like I'm sharper throughout the day. You know what I mean? So it's that, and it's also I just like it.
Sure.
I'm just enjoying it. Like I'm a sucker for a great story, and I've ran through almost all the good movies, I think. You know what I mean? And they're not cranking out new ones fast enough. So
were you always a reader? Like, were you like in high school reading?
I mean, I read some of the books I was supposed to in high school.
Yeah,
you know what
like
I mean?
outside
I read
of
Catcher
school.
in the Rye
Outside
in
of
1984 and all the, the ones
outside
that interested
of
me.
what was assigned.
Yeah.
Were you a big reader at all?
I wouldn't say a big reader. I was, a little bit if something interested me. You know what I mean? Like once I started getting into conspiracies and shit like that, like in the days before the internet, it's like you had to open a book if you wanted to get into some shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's funny because, I look back because we've known each other for 20 plus years at this point. We grew up right around the same part of town for the most part. But we didn't really hang out until we hung out a few times in high school. Yeah, when I was in high school, but we didn't. Really
and we had a mutual friend.
We had a mutual friend. I know I can remember the first time I actually met you. It was by the Walgreens by Santoro's. I was with Jonathan, our mutual.
Yeah.
And you were with a girl, and I forget why he had to meet up with you. I'm sure it was some kind of delinquency.
Probably had to do with some weed or some shit.
And we introduced whatever, and we ran in the same circle, so I'd probably see you at a party or something like that. But we started hanging out for real when I was at Northeastern. I was in class with the drummer of a band called Audible Mainframe. Victor was MCX Exposition was actually the vocalist of that band, and he went to our high school. But yeah,
rest in peace to my brother.
Yeah, good dude, well-loved figure out here in the Boston music scene. And he mentioned to you that we were in the same class and we connected somehow.
Yeah, and then we ended up in a class together, too. We ended up in a music theory
That's right. I forgot about
together.
that. Wow.
Yeah, and it was just in time, too, because I left Northeastern right after that semester, I think, too. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. 9/11 just happened. I was like, what the fuck? I didn't even know what I was studying or why I took a massive loan out to go do something that had no guarantee after it. You know what I mean? I didn't know what I was doing. I needed to, so I took that little time off and then went to the prestigious elite level Ivy League Bunker Hill Community College.
Shout out to Bunker.
Where I got my associate's degree in graphic design. Don't be jealous.
Yeah. Think about college, man. I think we're the only developed nation where kids are expected to decide what they want to do with the rest of their lives, right?
I mean, it's a great way of doing it. Take an 18-year-old who doesn't know shit about shit, put him in $100,000+ worth of debt.
Ridiculous.
With give him minimal skills and send him off in the world. It's great. It's a great idea.
I mean, it's a great way to kind of keep him in a certain lane, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we live in a country that, we live in a world that operates on debt.
Period.
In a large way.
Period.
And, part of that is okay. It's like, I understand it. Like, when you take a loan out from someone, you become partners and now you're both invested in each other.
Sure.
I get the concept, but I just think it's criminal to
a lot of it's predatory.
To throw so much debt on young kids.
18-year-old kid it's not even legal to drink, but yet you're expecting him to take out $150,000 loan that he's, in theory, not gonna pay until he's in his 50s, his early 50s. That's ridiculous.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's crazy.
insane.
Yeah.
But you know, I guess the point that I was getting at is our bond is rooted in a shared love of all things creative.
Absolutely.
Right?
And music too. I think, like when I you know what I mean? Like when we connected during that music theory class, it's like seeing we had certain things in common and shit like that. Sure. And then I was like, you got an MPC? Like you make you make
my
beats.
Goodness, I forget all about
You know what I mean?
That's
like
crazy.
What the fuck? Like holy
That's
shit! Like
right.
yo, come through the fucking spot. Like this is in the days of the band when I was rocking with the band and shit. Yeah. And I remember you brought your MPC over to the studio. We had it over there.
I forgot all about
I started
this.
using it kind of like between you and Mike, who also had one, and Johnny. You know what I mean? I kind of started learning it a little bit.
Sure.
That was my intro into making beats.
That's crazy.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man. And I really appreciated the fact that, like, I am a very shy-natured introvert, right? Until, you get to know me, I'm a complete dog. And, but, like, I'm not one to kind of initiate things or really make the plans, but you always made sure every weekend hit me up to invite me to whatever it is that you were doing, and I really, really appreciated that. Because it was definitely during a time where I really needed like a friend. I had a guy who I considered my best friend at that time, during high school, and very different trajectories. I look back on it now, but we grew apart. Went to Northeastern. The first year, was cool. My second year wasn't that great, especially socially. I wasn't, I spent a lot of time by myself, not really doing anything, just kind of being lost, confused, and depressed. You know what I mean? But
spent time there myself.
But but you came in right around the time. I remember, it's funny, like you're making me remember all these, other pieces to the puzzle. But I remember you one day pulling up to my house to pick me up, and that was the first time. I was like, it feels like that was like the first day of like our relationship. It was just really cool to look back on.
That's dope. I remember you used to do that too. You had that like maroon, was it Corolla? Was it Corolla?
The 96 Toyota Corolla.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. That was good shit, man.
Those good times, man. And then, you were part of a band called Savin L. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like the roadie.
Yo, you were with us all the time, man. And your enthusiasm was fucking dog.
I fucking loved you guys, man.
Like you say, like, you're saying to me, like, it was cool that I was like having you, but I loved having you around. You know what I mean? Like, like I said, we just had a lot in common. You know what I mean? And like having that love for music and seeing your enthusiasm over certain shit, it just elevated me. You know what I mean? And yeah.
I kind of missed that energy, because I was always like, for somebody who is someone who is very shy-natured and very introverted, I was always had insecurity issues. But like, when I was, on the floor listening to a band or listening to music, I get lost and I forget all of that.
Yeah.
And I fucking loved you guys, man. I wanted to support you guys. I wanted to be that guy that, potentially can like. Because some people don't want to dance because they don't want to be that first person to dance and be weird.
Right,
sometimes you need a person that's already doing it for you to feel comfortable enough to do that thing.
Without a doubt, yeah.
I felt like that was one way I could contribute.
And it was. I mean, pretty much everyone in the band at some point said, like, you're the unofficial 8th member of the band.
I remember.
You were in the front row at every fucking show with that energy, with the fucking dreads and the head fucking bobbing, you know what I mean? And all that, like, hands in the air, and that's what it would be. It was like you would see you, and then you would see the people around you, and that energy start to spread out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And before we knew it, the whole crowd might be going crazy.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I remember going to your first show at Sapmino.
Yeah.
And your last show. At 7, actually I was living in Florida at the time, and I flew in because I was just in town and just happened to fall.
That's right.
On a date that you guys were playing your last show, and it was like, I gotta say, it was pretty sad. It's very somber. I went into it thinking it was gonna be more of a celebration.
Yeah.
It was more of like, let's just get this over with.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird point, man. I mean, for me, like, a lot of the guys in the band, might still kind of hate me to this day for being maybe the main reason.
Yeah.
That it. Yeah, I mean, I think, shit, man. I mean, with 5 years in the band, for me, it just felt like it had kind of run its course toward the end there. It wasn't, but I was also a drug addict. You know what I mean? I was suffering. I was addicted to painkillers, and I was like not in a good place. You know what I mean? I was like, you know, I was just off in my own world. You know what I mean? And I was going through my own shit. Went into rehab, got fired from a job, like, you know, a bunch of there was a lot going on. Yeah. And it was just, it was a time of transformation for me. It was like a time of like a needed change. And it was just starting to feel a little stagnant. And,
half,
you know, it was
half a decade.
Half a decade. And, you know, as much as I hate to say it, but I got to a point where like I felt like I didn't want to grow anymore under that name of Savin-Hill. Because I'm not from Dorchester, and it felt fucked up to me. Like, and I'll say, so here's the, you know what I mean? So whatever, that was a huge thing.
You always contested that name.
I always contested that name. I hated it because it was like, I can't rep that neighborhood. I'm not from there. I understand you guys had the apartment in Savin-Hill, and we were over there practicing, and that's where the band formed, and that's where it started. But at the same time, it's like I'm emceeing. So I'm in a hip hop. Exactly. So like I understand like you from your funk background and from the rock background and whatever it might be. Like I understand that, you know, you're thinking of it like, oh, we're just the Main Street band. We're just using something that's like, and it doesn't matter. But in the world that I was in, it matters. That's and when people come up to me and be like, "What's the name of your band?" Oh, you're from Dorchester? No, I'm from Malden. Yeah. You're like, oh,
it's just awkward.
It's
awkward.
Just, you know what I mean? And so that was part of it, but there were a lot of different parts. There were a lot of things going on. And, you know, hey, we put out 2 albums. We played shows all over New England, everywhere in Boston. We went to New York a few times. And it was still, I mean, to this day, some of the times in my life, I mean, we had some crazy fucking experiences, some crazy road trips. Yeah, it was dope. It was dope. I wouldn't take it back for anything. But I was ready for the transition.
I mean, a half a decade, man, and you guys were. I mean, like it. Honestly, looking back on it, it didn't really seem like you guys were going to achieve much more than you already did, right? It wasn't like everyone was getting older. Yeah. The idea of you guys kind of being a national touring act, because I mean, around that time, in the way that the industry was set up in that period, I mean, like that was essentially the next step, right? To get a record deal or to, you know, tour nationally and, you know, kind of, create a bigger audience.
Right, and that wasn't us. Like, you know, you brought up Victor, you know, earlier, Exposition, and his band Audible Mainframe. I mean, they took it as far as they could in Boston. They took it a lot. I mean, to me, they were the gold standard of the hip hop band. Absolutely, you know what I mean? Like, we were out there, we were doing our thing, and we were in the mix. But to me, they set the trend. Yeah, they were the top level. Sure, you know what I mean? And when they got as far as they could get in Boston, you know, selling out all the main spots, they moved out to Cali. Have to. And they continued to pursue, and shit, man, they were coming up. They were on the rise. They were doing it, and shit, I was rooting for them, man.
Yeah, man.
You know, but
it's a solid group of people. You know, I wasn't particularly close to any of them. I had a couple of classes with Dave, the keyboardist / trumpet player. And you know, I knew Victor because he was a couple of grades ahead of me at my high school. You know, I remember one of the earlier memories I have of Victor is him with his half tucked, because, you know, at our high school, we went to an all boys Catholic high school, and we had a dress code. And I remember, you know, Victor with his big ass Cape Verdean fucking afro, walking around with his shirt half tucked, singing "Ghetto Superstar."
Sounds about right.
That is what in pure joy, not giving a fuck. And I always thought that was cool.
Which reminds me, one of my memories of you from school was you and Shiva walking through the hall singing "Player Hater" at the top of your lungs. Player. Yeah. Doing back and forth, doing the whole duet, and I just happened to be walking by, and I was like, "Oh shit, there's like a show going on right now." Yeah, it was cool.
Shiva and I, you know, hopefully I'll get him on the podcast. We're definitely we were close. Yeah. In high school, you know, because we were, you know, one of the very few black kids, you know, Haitian kids. Naturally, you're gonna gravitate towards your people, and we were very ignorant. to say the least.
Shit, man, you made my day.
we were
made
very,
my day.
There were very ignorant moments together, and I wouldn't trade them for the world.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, man, and and then you moved on. You went through what you went through. You recovered. You got your life back in order. And a lot of this was happening when I was living in Florida between 2006 and 2009.
Yeah, man, because I remember actually like having a phone conversation with you, like a long conversation, when I told you about everything was going on, and you seemed surprised because, like you said, you had been in Florida the whole time, so you didn't see the escalation.
I didn't.
You didn't see the beginning stages and how it evolved and everything like that. You talked to me when I was already at that point where I was feeling like the world was coming down.
Sure. Yeah, and I think I barely remember. I think we were supposed to talk or supposed to link up, and like you were saying, it's like, I'm sorry, bro, but like I'm in a bad place, or you're about to go to rehab. I forget what it was.
Yeah.
But it was cool because like when we started, I moved back to Boston 2009. And you had the room with SETI.
Yeah.
Right? You split the room with SETI.
That was it was actually, and I remember that because he was calling himself K9 at the time.
Yeah.
And I remember it was 2009 because we kept saying 2K9. You know what I mean? It's 2K9 and this whole shit. You know what I mean? But yeah, that was a dope experience, man. I mean, I don't know what else I would have done with myself if I didn't have that. That was like, so I went through the crash. I didn't have a job. I ended up collecting unemployment for the full 2 years. You know what I mean? But during that time, me and SETI built up that studio. I mean, SETI did most of the building. I kind of like went for the ride and helped him carry the lumber and shit. You know what I mean? Like, helped pay to get the carpet put in. You know what I mean? Shit like that. But he did most of the work. But it was really dope, man, setting that up, getting the equipment in there, and just learning. You know what I mean? Just dedicating all my time to, like, learning how to mix, learning how to make beats, learning Logic and how to record and all this other shit. And, man, I learned a lot during that time.
I'm actually super grateful for that time because you actually introduced me to Logic, right? So I kind of piggybacked off of your learning journey of that software, because I had that MPC and, we had that mutual shared love for, hip hop music. But that was around the time where, it was transitioning from, you're making your beats with some kind of hardware, SP1200 or an MPC or something like that.
Right.
Now people are using, programs like Logic, and Acid was big around that time.
Yeah. Acid shit. That's the first. Yeah, that was the first program that Johnny had.
Yeah, Acid and
Jay
Fruit
Farah.
Loops.
Yeah,
Jay Farah, right? Shout out to Jay Farah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even gotten into music if it wasn't for him.
Yeah,
I mean, he opened it up.
It's funny.
He was the dude.
And this is another connection that you had. So Jay Farah is the reason why I started making beats.
Yeah.
My biggest inspiration as far as producers goes is the RZA. That's the person I've always kind of like chased in a way.
Yeah, no question.
But, you were, rocking with Jay Farah and you're making music with him, and I guess he gave you a CD of beats. And it was one beat specifically.
I remember it.
With the cello.
Yep, I remember it.
And stoned out of my mind, and I love those somber kind of, orchestral kind of beats. And I remember hearing it, completely falling in love, and for the first time telling, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
That's a powerful moment, man.
And I, somehow, within the next year, finessed that MPC, and that was that was the beginning of my journey.
Damn, man. I hope Johnny, if you're listening, I hope Johnny realizes how many people he influenced, man.
Really,
I know it's me. I think he's heard you tell that story before.
Yeah, I must have told him that.
I think Deese even will give Johnny credit for, because it's just one of those things, like when you're younger, especially back then, I mean, we're talking the 90s.
Yeah.
This isn't, nowadays where everybody has GarageBand on their phone and anyone can make a beat. It's like if you wanted to make beats and produce, it's like you had to really go after it. You had to do some research to learn
time, money.
I mean, he went to school. He went to MassCom, and that was the only way that we were even getting in a studio at that time. Yeah. You know what I mean? We didn't have the money to pay for studio time.
That.
But he was going to school there. So the students would get the graveyard shift. They would get midnight.
Is that a song called The Graveyard Shift?
A song called The Graveyard Shift. Still, one of my favorites. Definitely my favorite from that era.
Yeah.
And, we'd go in there at like midnight, 1 o'clock, and we'd just record all night. We'd get out at 8, 9 o'clock. We'd be going to the Doo-Wop Diner in Malden, like delirious, 8, 9 in the morning, just laughing over bullshit because we're like, we're on another planet. But, man, those days were dope. I mean, Johnny, like, he got acid, he got the computer, he got the DJX keyboard, and he started making beats. And he was the person who brought me into like rhyming too. He's the first person I knew when I first met Touch. I was a freshman in high school, and I saw that there was this group of kids that was like into hip hop, and like I could see Jay was like into graffiti and shit like that, and I was like, oh, I think this is my crew. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So started over like weed and shit. I would let Touch borrow my fucking pipe, and then it was like, yo, just come smoke with us and like all this shit. And he would tell me about Johnny and how, you gotta hear Johnny rap, like this dude's ill, all this shit. And so I remember like we happened to be at the same party one night, and I caught them freestyling out on.
Was he in the same grade?
Nah, he was a grade above me.
Okay.
And George was there and the whole crew, you know what I mean, everybody. And just caught them freestyling on the back porch, and I went out and I was just like, "Fuck, let me see what I can do."
Were you freestyling before that? Was it the first time you freestyled?
It wasn't the first time I freestyled, but I didn't.
That's ballsy.
No, but I didn't. It was one of the first times. But it was like 5 people. Sure. It wasn't like there was this big crowd and a bunch of girls hanging around listening and shit. It was like a few dudes out on the back porch. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I was like, all right, let me see. And Johnny was just that type of dude who was very encouraging. You know what I mean? Like, Victor was like that, too. Like, whenever they'd see artists, you know what I mean? They knew that, like, we weren't the majority. Mm-hmm. And they would really go out of their way to, like, lift people up. You know what I mean? Tell them that what they're doing is dope. And, like,
validation
I like
is so important for artists, man.
Yeah.
Whether they want to admit it or not.
Yeah. And I wanted more of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do something and someone tears it apart and tells you what you're doing wrong. It's like, that doesn't necessarily motivate you to do it the right way. Fact. And a lot of times it just shuts people down.
That's a fact.
But you point out something that someone's doing well and you give them some credit for it, they want that feeling again. So they're going to do it again, and they're going to do it even better.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? And so that was the thing, like, and then so I'd start writing rhymes. I'd be like, yo, Johnny, what do you think of this? You know what I mean? All this stuff. And then, like, the first thing that I ever recorded and put together was like over one of his beats, and he recorded me like in his bedroom with his little makeshift setup and everything like that, probably on like a 4-track or some shit.
Yeah.
And it was dope. It was dope, man.
Yeah, man. It's crazy to see the journey. Just music has brought us. Like I don't know what else I would be doing with my life. You know, like outside of like having to go to work and punch in and do the life stuff. Like, it's literally how I hang out with people, right? I'm not, I'm very introverted. I keep to myself. I have a very small social battery.
Yeah.
But if I am going to spend time with you, more than likely it's either over MMA, which is my favorite sport.
Yep.
We share. That's another thing we share.
Yeah, we'll probably be watching the fights tomorrow.
That's a fact. Big fights tomorrow.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to it. Or I'm just hanging out. Or we're creating something. We're making some kind of music. We're making some kind of visual or something like that. That's how I, and that's what I love about hip hop music, right? And I feel like that's why it's the most influential force on the planet right now, arguably.
Yeah.
Because, human beings, we're tribal, and ultimately what culture is the shared experience of a tribe.
Right.
Right. The thing about hip hop music is that it transcends ethnicity and locality, essentially like the two major variables of culture, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And like it's a shared experience amongst ethnicities and peoples all over the world.
Yeah. And
that's why it's so large, you know what I'm saying? And like that's, part of the reason why, other than probably weed, you and I are friends. You know what I'm saying? Because we come from two different backgrounds, two different cultures, ethnicities, but we share the same culture in hip hop.
Without a doubt.
We have that shared experience, and that's why I think it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like, if kind of pushed onto the people in a positive way, hip hop can do so many beautiful things, but when infiltrated and contaminated, it can do destructive things as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like most things. Like most things, you know what I mean? But that's a good point. I mean, there's been a lot of hip hop shows that I've gone to throughout the years where there's more diversity in that room than anywhere else. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You don't see that as much with other genres of music.
Yeah.
Or other avenues. And I mean, now here we are in 2022 and the world is a little bit different. Sure. And these kids are coming up and they're much more integrated and people are much more together. But when we were coming up, a hip hop show was the place where you would really get a mixture of people. You know what I mean? True. And like you said, all united under this love for this music.
Were these shows our church?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. When I think about it.
Yeah.
That's
what music is in a lot of ways, man. Like it's funny you say that because I've even been thinking about it in that way lately. Because a lot of times on Sundays or sometimes on Saturdays, I'll wait. Even if it's on a Sunday, I'm up early. I'm up before the sun, no matter what. But like put in some headphones, listen to music, get a little elevated, whatever. And that's church for me. You know what I mean? That's my daily dose of spirituality. That's my connection with something bigger than myself. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it puts me in that place. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it is like that Sunday morning, like solitude with just some headphones and some weed and some coffee and whatever. It's like, it's church. That's church for me.
You know, and I was having this and I had this conversation with Sonny when he came by to have a conversation, and the older I get, the more I realize the impact of hip hop and the music and just music in general. Yeah, it doesn't matter the genre, and what makes me really sad is here in the United States everything is a commodity. It doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
If you can, sell it, it's going to be sold, including culture, including religion, spirituality, and it makes me wonder how we're impacted at the fact that, culture is just that. It's commerce. It's, if you go to different cultures and different tribes across the world, they're performing rituals that include music, and they're doing it to commemorate a time of the year or honoring their dead. And there's no money exchange. There's nothing, none of that involved. There's no tithing. And you know what I'm saying? They're just there to have that shared experience. But when we do anything like that over here, it's some kind of transaction.
And there's different ways of looking at that. Like, there's a part of me that's like, that's distasteful. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, money is currency. It's a current. It's energy. You know what I mean? Like, paying an admission to an artist that you love to go to their show and exchanging a little bit of that energy. To do it. Like, sure. I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that aspect of it.
Yeah, and going back to that, validation, the validation that I mentioned earlier, it's very important for artists to be validated in their works from good feedback. And if you pay for someone pays for their piece, I mean, that there's no better way to validate someone's work, right?
Yeah, someone asked that the other day. Someone, posted something about, I forget how we worded it exactly, but it's basically bringing up the idea of paying for features. You know what I mean? And like, is that corny or is that, you know what I mean? And like, I understand the purist angle of like, no, if someone's gonna feature me on their song, it's because it's out of respect. It's because they like me as an artist and whatever. But man, artists don't make money. And they don't make a living. And like, if you value an artist's work and you pay them for a 16 or some shit like that, I mean, I think that's cool. And it's like, for every up and coming artist trying to make a living or try to get out of their situation, they all want to get to that level where people will pay them for features.
That's a fact.
You know what I mean? And
that's
like,
a fact.
And I think that's dope. I think we gotta support each other as much as we can.
No, I agree. I just wish we just live in a world where art wasn't commodity, because I feel like there would be so much more advancement, if it's the word I'm looking for, it would, I feel like people would reach mastery a lot more quicker if there wasn't money involved, you know. And I know I'm being, it sound like a youthful idealist, you know what I mean? I get that, but like if people were, you know, collaborating and there wasn't money involved, they were purely trying to collaborate with people they respect and resonated with, or you know, art, you know, visual artists had, you know, unlimited access to, you know, paint materials, markers, and canvases, and classes in order to, you know, work on their craft. I mean, that would be, what a world that would be.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm a big believer in that because, you know, you can give everybody in the world a cello. There's only going to be a small percentage of those people that actually do something with it. This is
true.
You know what I mean? So I'm a big believer in give everybody the resources and the means to do it, and let the people that are really, truly driven take it to that level.
How much waste would we have if we kind of took that approach? Because like you said, there's only a small percentage that are going to engage in said activity.
Well, I think maybe you have like a school or something that's free and a student can show up, and if they don't put in the work and they don't show up to the lessons, then they don't get anything out of it. It's like you're not going to buy a $10,000 you know, instrument and give it to everybody and say,
I'd hope not.
You know what I mean?
I'd hope not.
But to be able to have the means to try certain things and then have the tools at your disposal, you know what I mean, to go after them.
And there's a thing to be said about personality tests. There are some personality tests that are very accurate that I've taken myself, that, you know, I wish that I have taken 20 years ago to get a better understanding of my tendencies, and some of my drivers, so I can better choose, you know, make better choices as far as, you know, what to do with my life, you know. And it would be cool if there was a, you know, a system where there was a kind of like an accurate personality test that, you know, kind of, you know, had an understanding of, you know, these kids' tendencies and kind of just nudge them in the direction, towards areas of interest that they would likely be more into.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, I just think I think everybody should try to find the things that set them on fire.
Turn them on.
You know what I
Whatever
mean?
turns you on.
And go after it. Like, you know, especially when it comes to art and creativity, like, it's tough to make a living off, you know what I mean, off of your craft. But
it's important,
I'm of the mind to make time for it, no matter what. Like, I mean, here I am. You know, I ain't making a penny. You know what I mean? But I still put an album out at the beginning of the year. I'm working on another one. It's like you said, it's like some people, you know, when they get a little older or some shit like that, maybe they got a family or whatever the fuck they got going on. But, you know, one day a week they play in a dart league or some shit. Or they go and they play pool, or they, you know, play some cards, or, you know, whatever it is. Like, for us, we link up with our friends and we get in the studio. You know what I mean? And we try to make shit. And if, you know, if a penny never comes to, I mean, shit, man, I'm terrible with fucking money anyways. I don't know how to commoditize my shit. I like the creative process. I like putting together something that's going to last forever. But then once it's done, I just want to move on to the next thing. You know what I mean? Like, I could use someone in my life who just takes my shit and tries to put it out there and share it with the world. Because, I mean, you know, in the world that we're in right now, it's like the people that are getting notoriety, some of them it's because they're the most talented. A lot of them it's because they got the grind. You know what I mean? They're just the ones that are out there. They know the social media game. They know how to get themselves out there and how to navigate the landscape.
I mean, someone said, you know, the music business is 80% business, 20% music. You know,
facts.
You know, and if you can grind and you can network, you know, you can make anything happen. Man, I think that's a good place to end the conversation. This was a good one, man.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you coming by.
Yo, thank you for the invite. I'm sure it's going to be one of many, many more.
Yeah, man. I look forward to having further discussions, and I'm just looking forward to the future.
Appreciate you,
man. Appreciate you.